So I had a little different bike to work on at the shop the other day. It's an old Schwinn pea picker, and it's in pretty decent shape. Had a drum brake there in the front, the Springer front end, the old 5-speed stick shifter, and the mag sprocket and everything. But it's a little 5-speed. Like I say, it's got the suspension in the front end, and then the Springer fork, and then the little Springer banana seat there. So yeah, it's a pretty cool bike. It's pretty decent shape. Most of these old bikes got pretty torn up. The boys' bikes especially, so are converted into BMX bikes in the old days or whatnot. But so the bike came in for basically an overhaul, and there was a new rear wheel that they wanted to have built up for it. The bike wasn't necessarily brought in to be restored. Mainly just to be kind of cleaned up and overhauled and re-greased and kind of make it into a rider, I guess. So we did another. They had brought in another hub with it there. That they wanted to kind of a time period correct Atom multi-speed hub there with the drum brake. So we took off the rear side pull caliper and installed this instead. And then they had brought a rim there as well, which was just a reproduction rim. Looked similar to the original one, but it's slightly different. And put a new chain. That was really, other than the cables, put all new cables and housing on there, and that was about the only thing we really put new on it. Just rebuilt everything else, cleaned it up, put it back together. But that's the reproduction rim. It looks very similar. It doesn't have the tubular, the S2 Schwinn rim on there, which the S, just for an FYI, the S2 rim is the same as the standard 406, I guess, millimeter bead diameter. The S5 and S6 rims are the different sizes altogether, but it's another story altogether. A little reproduction tire. One of the guys was like, "Oh, is this an original tire?" But yeah, I don't think they had Twitter and Facebook back then, so I don't know. It looked cool, but it didn't seat up real well. But anyway, back to working on this bike. First thing I like to do on these older bikes that probably haven't never been taken apart is I'll just shoot some penetrating oil, WD-40 or whatever, let it kind of soak in on these kind of spots that sometimes want to be seized up, some of these old bolts and whatnot. And everything came apart pretty well. Taking the headset apart, I kind of ran into a little clearance issue here where it, comes out so far and then it hits the bolt there for the Springer fork, so had to back that off a little bit. Typically I don't like to use an adjustable wrench, but everything on this is American sized, 1/2 inch, 9/16 or whatever, so didn't really have any standard hand tools up at work. We pretty much everything these days is metric, so we had to improvise a little there. But yeah, typically I like to use the actual correct size wrenches on stuff like that. But just got to be careful with it. That thing basically just comes apart like your standard threaded headset. Other than that, so bottom bracket here, it's your standard, old American sized bottom bracket. Which the threads are going to be backwards here, so you'll turn it clockwise to take it apart. And basically it's the lock nut, and you got a little washer with a tooth on it, slips into a little slot there, kind of helps you adjust everything. So taking this apart, and then realized that I needed to take off the chain guard there as well. So it's one thing you just got to kind of think it through when you're taking stuff apart. Typically you're going to have to remove some extra pieces and bits, if you're doing the fenders and everything else there. So got the it's basically just a couple little screws or bolts there that hold the chain guard in place. Not a huge deal. Yeah, all the nothing was really seized up. I think the bike was kept in a shed or garage somewhere that was decent climate control wise, because basically had surface rust on most of the chrome stuff, but nothing major for sure. But it was pretty much all the original components on it, with the exception of, it looked like it got some new tires at one point, but everything else was pretty bone stock original. And when you're taking out these one-piece cranks, you always want to take that outer, the non-drive side bearing out, and then the drive side you need to drop it down into the onto the race before it comes out. And found a couple wasps in there once I got the crank out, which you always want to kind of be careful. On some of these bikes they'll have old spiders, or you never know what in there, so it's always another reason to use that penetrating oil. So I looked up the serial number there. There's websites you can go to and put the serial number in, and come to find out this one was made in 1969. So I don't know if that makes it a 1970 model or 69 or what. But and the little shifter there, I remember, I don't know, way back when I had first kind of messed with these, I always thought it was some kind of super complex shifting mechanism, but it's basically just lots of covers and whatnot, and basically it's just a standard BMX or mountain bike brake cable. There's that chrome piece there. There's a spring-loaded section, kids getting all buck wild power shifting it and such. So, and it basically just had a little wavy washer and a nylock nut, so I adjusted that and took all the bits and bearings, all that old grease, and I let it soak overnight in the solvent tank. Helped a little bit getting it all cleaned up. So got the frame cleaned up and all the pieces there, and bearings are all cleaned up and everything. Just needed to overhaul the hubs and rebuild the rear wheel. I left it alone. We rebuilt a new rear wheel. Front wheel I rebuilt, put new spokes in it and such. So the bearings here, this is one thing where I've seen lots of folks, try to overhaul these and get the bearings in the wrong way. So the easy way on the bottom bracket to remember is just, the text will face outwards, or the solid ring part will face outwards. And normally that's how it is on headset bearings as well, but this particular style, you see them on the old Schwinns and then a lot of the old early BMX bikes, it's kind of opposite. So it kind of just, you want to go with the curve fits into the cup and the race there, just so. I mean, if you're unsure, I would say just put it in there by hand and then push the race down on top of it and rotate it, and you want it to feel nice and smooth spinning wise there. If it kind of binds up, you probably have it in backwards. So I took the front wheel part, and this is the that little drum brake, and basically just it's like a normal hub, and then the drum portion just sits on the outside, and it's got another lock nut that kind of holds it in place. But as you activate the lever, it's got a little cam that expands those two brake pads outward into the hub, and that's how it use the brakes there. So got that all cleaned up, got the rim cleaned up, and just laced it up with new spokes. But that's pretty much it. Fast forward to the end result there. Just reverse the process of putting it back together. Got new cables and everything, like I said, and cleaned it up a little. It still had, not perfect, but it's enough for a rider. Definitely roadworthy. So took a little spin on it. Pretty fun little bike to play around on and such. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. And yeah, feel free to comment, like, questions, any of that. Subscribe. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. So thanks for watching.